Hi and welcome to another Silent Hunter 5 tutorial. In this tutorial I want to show you a specific torpedo attack technique, namely the one of the AttackPlot. The last video was about the attack disk and now we put it to use. The AttackPlot technique is rather easy and straightforward. It's just that we make a drawing on our map or on our tactical map and we try to get information from that map in the end, or from that drawing, specifically the speed of the target and the course of the target, and then we can get all other values that we need, like bearing, angle and bow and so on, from the attack disk itself. So this one is rather similar to what a lot of users do, even if they're playing with map updates or without real navigation, but it works as well with real navigation and with no map updates, just that you have to make one or two more considerations, and I will show you now theoretical first how that works. So let's first consider what you would do if you had map updates on and no real navigation. That means you always know what the position of your ship is and you always see on your map the position of the target ships. You would start with one or several targets on the map. Normally they are kind of depicted as a square, as you see here in this picture. And what you would do is that you just mark the position of the target with an X with your marker, and you note down the time, or you just say that is the time 0 now, and you start your stopwatch. You would then wait for a certain amount of time, let's say X minute, as it says here on this sketch, and you would follow the target until it has moved some distance, and then you just make another X marker on the target's position and you note down the time. What follows is that you draw a line between those two markers. From that line you can, with the use of the compass, find out the course of the target ship, and you know the distance of this track, so you can divide that by the time between those positions, and from that you can easily calculate the speed of the target. If you're playing without map updates, but as well without real navigation, that means you always know the position of your own submarine. It works similar, but now you have to measure the bearing and distance of the target ship each time you make a measurement, and you have to use those values to mark the position of the ship on the map. Bear in mind that you have to transfer from the relative bearing in relation to your submarine to the true bearing in relation to magnetic north, and how that is done you can see in the attack disk video. You then wait once again for a certain amount of time, approximately 3 to 5 minutes normally, and you then make your second measurement. In that time your submarine might have moved to another location depending on your speed and your course. Use the same technique for the second measurements as you did for the first measurements. Record the relative bearing and the distance to the target, transfer the relative bearing to the true bearing, and then draw and mark down the position on the ship from your current submarine position. Now you proceed in the same way as before. You draw a line between your two measurements. Using the compass you can get information about the course of the target ship. You measure the distance between the two positions and divide it by the time, and by that you get the speed of the target ship. We now move over to a situation where we don't have map updates and we use real navigation. That means we normally do not have the real-time position of our submarine. You could use the navigator to give you a position every 5 minutes, or you can ask him over and over again to calculate the position, but bear in mind that his position calculations have a slight error, so that you don't get the precise position. So I would strongly advise not to use that technique, but instead we will just note down our own course and our own velocity and make a projection from the measurements that we do for the target ships to correct for the position of the ship. And I will show you this technique right now. It is important that we know our own speed and we know our own course, and that during the time of the measurements the course and the speed of our submarine stays constant. So we take once again the first measurement, we measure the relative bearing, we measure the distance to the target ship, we transfer the relative bearing to the tube bearing, and then we put down a mark anywhere on the map that represents our own submarine, and from that mark we draw down the distance and the tube bearing and make another mark that represents the target ship at that point of time. After a certain amount of time we make a second measurement of the relative bearing, and the distance once again converts to the tube bearing, and we once again mark that down on our map, but this time from the same spot of our submarine, from the same marker that we used for the first measurement. If we now draw a line between those two positions of the target ship and measure the distance between those two positions, we can once again find out the course and the velocity of the target ship, but only in relation to our own submarine. And that is only correct if our submarine is stationary and not moving. If the submarine is moving, those relative course and the relative velocity will not be the same as the true course and the true velocity of the target ship. So we have to correct for that. We do that by simple vector addition. We draw a line from our submarine position that represents the course, and we measure the distance that our submarine will have traveled between the two measurements we took from the target ship, and then we transfer that course line and that distance to the second measurement of the target ship. If we now draw a line from the first position of the target ship to this corrected second position of the target ship, we can find out the true course of the target ship and the true velocity of the target ship. Okay, so here we are now submerged on periscope depth, and we have a target in front of us, or a bit approaching us, in a good position. And that target we will take as our practice target for the AttackPlot technique. So let's first get a general overview of the situation. We are here on the course of 315, missions are stopped at the moment, and we have our target, there it is, on a relative bearing of 296, 297 approximately. So if we look 296 somewhere here, there's our target. So the first thing I change, go on to course of 340 approximately, slow speed to get a bit closer to the course where he will pass by, and once we are stable on course we can start with our first measurements. It's important for the AttackPlot technique that you are first stable on a course with constant speed, constant course, so that we can project our own path on the AttackPlot. In the meanwhile, we can identify the target. So let's see. We first have to tell our watch officer that we are following that target, and then I bring up the recognition manual. I know already what kind of target it is because I did the mission already to test it, but that shape of a ship with the chimney in the back and this kind of structure in the front, that's kind of a signature of a tanker. And then I just look for the same mast structures and try to compare with that one. That one has not those masts going up as the one that I saw here, and it's a bit higher and not that broad with those structures to the side. So let's look further. No, that one is not the one that we are searching for either. That one looks good. So here we see the same mast structure in front, chimney in the back, and as well this main structure here in the front. It looks rather similar to that one that we see here. So that's the one that we want, that we send to the TDC. What we want to see is that actually the draft is for the torpedo depth in the end, the mast height. That is important for the TDC range estimates, and as well as speed is more or less useful to know, because if you have a speed estimate you can compare what the max speed of the ship is and see if there's something kind of not working out. So that's some of the basic info that you get from the recognition manual. To send if you don't know the mast height, or if you don't know if you're not sure what kind of target you have, because you can't really identify it or you can't really see it, you can just have a look at the average mast height and you can set it manually. It will be similar to something between 25 meters and 30 meters, so you can just use a rough estimate for the mast height as well to make your first measurements, and it might work. You should be somewhere in the ball range. To set the mast height manually, you have to first send some mast height to the TDC. So just take any ship. We set now that mast height to the TDC anyways, because we are quite sure that's the correct ship. And then you go into range here on the watch officer menu, scroll over here, and you can use the mouse wheel to change the values. But we had a value of 29.9, and that's the one we're going to use. I bring up as well the stopwatch, and I bring up the attack disk, and I couple that one right away with the course, so you see it's already adjusting the course to the one that we are having. I will use that one to transfer the relative bearing to the true bearing in the end, but you will see that in a second. And then I just lower the periscope again, because I don't want to be exposed for too long, and I wait until we are on our final course of 340 approximately. Okay, so we are on our heading of our course, and I note down the course that we are running at. It's 339, and we're running with speed of 1.4 knots. Might accelerate a bit because you're just coming out of the turn, so we will check that later as well, but for the moment it's 1.4 knots. I think it's rather stable now, so that's okay. We take now our first measurement. We will measure the bearing, the relative bearing, and we will measure the distance, and then once we have that, we can start the stopwatch and make the drawings on the AttackPlot.
Neues Ziel wird erfasst.
So let's check that still we have the right settings of the mast height, and then we use the steady meter to measure the height. And we get a value of 4,600 meters and a bearing of approximately 275. And we start the stopwatch. Can lower the periscope again to not be exposed, and you make now the drawings. So I just put a marking here. That's the position we are measuring from. Then I take the ruler, zoom in, so I get the precise starting point.
Frachter mit langsamer Fahrt. Näher kommend. Peilung 275 in großer Entfernung.
And I zoom a bit out so I can make the better course line. We have to first transfer it as well to the relative bearing, the absolute, the total, the true bearing. We are on 339, that's okay, and we saw the target on a bearing of 275, which translates to on a relative bearing of 275, which translates to a true bearing of 254. And that we use in the plot, 254. 254, like that, and then we use that one to measure distance, and we had a distance of 4,600. So that's the spot, and here we make a marking. That's the first position that we record. And now we wait 5 minutes to the next measurement. And in the meanwhile, we can calculate what kind of distance you will travel during that time. We are running still with 1.5 knots is it now, so we will take 1.5 knots as our speed. And I look up in the charts. I have the speed conversion chart, that's the one I use, and we will measure for 5 minutes, and we see here 2 knots 5 minutes. That means we are running with, we're going a distance of 300 meters. If I divide that, let's see, 1 minute then is 150 meters approximately, and 1.5 knots is then 200 meters approximately. I hope I did that correctly. Let's see, 300 meters divided by 2 knots. That means 150 meters per minute, and that was 1.5. It's 220 meters, if I did that correctly. I'm not the brightest fellow if it comes to arithmetics. I only need some tools to actually help me, but we will just take 220 meters now. So we are approaching 5 minutes, and we get ready for our next measurement. So 5 minutes, we make our measurement, and
Neues Ziel wird erfasst.
we have approximately 330 meters and a head bearing of 276, 277 maybe, 277 and 3,300 meters. Can continue with our attack plot. We just adjust that one to the new true bearing. The new true bearing is from 277, it's 256, 25. And we adjust the drawing. 256 is approximately here, and we adjust the range as well, 3,300 meters. Like that. We make another mark here, and now we have to adjust for our own movement. That means we draw another line with our course. Our course was 339. So you go from here, 339, like that, and we said we cover a distance of 220 meters. So we go for 250, something like that. That's 200, 250, so I go a bit less than 250. That's the way that we went. And now we make the final line. I just erase that one to make it a bit clearer. We make a draw line from the first measurement we took to the projected second measurement, and we see he's going a course of 60. You put the compass on top of that, 60, and he covered a distance of 1,350 meters. And now we take our speed measurements again. 5 minutes it was. 1,350, so we take that line. He's going approximately 9 knots. 9 knots on a course of 60. So we can put in the speed already. 9 knots. We use the attack disk to set the speed of the target 60, so we put the 0 marker of the target disk to the 60 on the compass. And now we can get the angle on the bow as well. So let's do that. Take another measurement of the bearing. There it is. I stop the engines now, I don't want to overshoot. Come on.
Maschinen, stop!
And we have him on a bearing now of 279. 279, that corresponds 279 here. That corresponds to an angle on bow of 18 right. So make sure to not move the periscope or the bearing marker, because the bearing will be coupled to the angle of bow, or the other way around. So now we can make angle on bow. We set 18 right. Like that. And now you see the angle on bow is coupled to the periscope movement, to the bearing. And we see as well the track angle, we want to have that more or less close to 90, so that we have the full length of the ship to hit, and as well a steeper impact angle of the torpedo, so that the charge is more likely to go off. The gyro angle will actually tell us on which course the torpedo is leaving the ship, not in relation to north, but in relation to our ship. So you can already plan ahead and see the gyro angle becomes close to 90 when we have him approximately in that position on that bearing. And then we make, somewhere before, maybe here or so, we make another measurement of the range, to have an updated range, and we send the torpedo on its way. In the meanwhile, we can set the torpedo depth. The draft of the ship was approximately 10 meters, so I set the depth to somewhere in the middle, 5 meters. We use slow speed of the torpedo. We use not a salvo, but a single one, the impact pistol, and I just shoot from one tube, one tube one. But I can open the tube already. I think we risk the shot soon. When he's passing through here, we will take the shot. Even though the impact angle is some 45 degrees, but that's good enough. Just make a final measurement on the range. Did I mess up my angle on bow now? I think I did, so let's do that again. Just to be safe. The range is like that. And let's get the attack test once again. We have him on a bearing of 293, which is corresponding to an angle on bow of 3 to right. So let's see, 3 to right, like that. And we aim for the main structure. And there it goes. You see, we are really close. We are about 1,000 meters or so. The range was below 1,000 meters, but that is as far as I want to, as close as I want to get to the target if possible. Because it's just, this technique is not really full. It's, if you make the measurement slightly off, if you have difficulties because of weather or something, you might just miss. And I want to play on the safe side. So I try to get as close as possible, and if it's not, if I have to shoot from a far distance, slightly ahead of it, but it might be just off to some. That we got the speed slightly wrong and course slightly wrong, the angle on bow, just one of those measurements. If they don't agree, you might have a variation, and therefore it's important that you are close. Or, as I wanted to say, if that's not really possible, if you have to take the shot from a far distance, I take a salvo of 1 or 2 torpedoes to make sure that one of them hit. So I'm not one of the persons that try to snipe with torpedoes, make far distance shots with one torpedo that hit directly on the mark and kill the ship with only one torpedo. I just try to get one hit to make it fall back or limp, or maybe even think it, and then kind of finish it off later from close range, and if necessary with a salvo. If you look actually on the statistics of different techniques, what they used and how many torpedoes they shot, how many torpedoes they missed, it was often that they actually missed. Maybe it was as well dot torpedoes, but who knows. So it wasn't really one torpedo, one hit statistics as far as I know. So this concludes the attack plot technique. I hope you found it somewhat instructive and that you learned something. And I hope that you can kind of use it to your advantage in the future.